Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiremat. Nowadays, language becomes an inevitable part of human beings. Every community, every nation has its own language. Whether that language is developed to a great extent or not, that is not the subject here. But anyhow, language is a form of communication. Without language, a man becomes simply an animal. That doesn't mean animals don't have their language. Animals have also their own language, but that language is not that much of developed when compared to the human beings. The language of human beings is far more advanced. It is so sensitive and sensible, and it can communicate anything at any time to a group of people or to a community or to others. A man can live without a food for some time, but it is very difficult to live without proper communication. Communication is so important. Language as a form of expression, as a form of communication, it has developed its own cultural, educational, economical, social, and civilizational aspects. Nowadays, the language has not remained as a form of communication only, but it is a cultural aspect of a community or a society. Then what does language mean? Of course, what is the origin of a language? And so many such questions appear before us regarding language. I have already told you, language is a form of communication. It exchanges between men, women, communities, and societies, their feelings, thoughts, emotions, and etc. etc. It is developed to a great extent nowadays. Language has two forms. One is a spoken form and another is written form. Of course, spoken form is widely reached to one and all, but written form is not that much of reached to one and all. But anyhow, these two forms are very important to lead a life of communication and happiness, to bring societies come together, to bring communities come together. These two aspects are very important. But anyhow, written form of language is developed after spoken form of language. Then, when spoken form is originated, it is difficult to answer this question. So many persons, so many linguists tried their own way to trace the origin of language. But they cannot say it very authoritatively. They say just like a blind ones who try to understand an elephant. Some people say, some linguists say, that language is originated when man is appeared on this earth. Because of his birth on earth, his body movements, his sounds, his facial expressions communicate something to others. With his body movements, facial expressions, and sounds one produced would become the origin of a language. So in this way, widely and broadly, the origin of a language can be traced. Some linguists tried to trace the origin of a language in their own way. American linguist Stephen Anderson said that the spoken language is originated 60,000 or 1 lakh years ago. But it is not widely accepted. Of course, it is an assumption, but this assumption cannot be rejected. Anyhow, concentrating completely on the origin of a language, it is better to know the functions of a language, nature and scope of a language, and other characteristics of a language. I have already told you language is a social, cultural, economical, educational, widely accepted form of communication. One cannot live without communication. But how one communicates is very important. The communication should be very effective, should be meaningful, should be sensitive, and should be sensible. Of course, when we communicate something in the form of a sound to others, that is, the production of sound is very important in language. We push sounds from sound box through the throat, palate, dentals, lips, nose, etc., etc. Then it produces a kind of sound. The group of sound produced like that should give us a meaning, should communicate to us something. And the language consists those group of sounds. Those group of sounds form group of words, and those group of words form into sentences. So, language is a production of sounds, words, and sentences. Through these parts of language, man communicates something to others in the community. So, by that, he fulfills his aspirations, his wants, his desires, and etc., etc. So, communication becomes an integral part of a human being nowadays. Of course, so many American linguists, such as Chomsky, Fraser, and others try their best to define language, to define the origin of a language. But they have made some efforts. They have expressed some opinions, but those opinions are not completely accepted. Those opinions are under consideration. But anyhow, the effort they made should be appreciated in understanding and defining a language. In India, so many grammarians tried to define language, and Padini is one of them. He was a Sanskrit grammarian in the 5th century BCE. It is said that he formulated 4,000 formulas in Sanskrit language, in Sanskrit grammar. And those formulas are very helpful to communicate something in the form of a language to others. And of course, Panini influenced so many other grammarians in the world. And as far as Kannada language is concerned, we can remember Kesiraja, a Kannada grammarian who lived in the 14th century of Common Era. He introduced some of the formulas into Kannada grammar, and by that he tried his best to extend Kannada language. He brought a kind of development, a kind of advancement to Kannada language. There are so many grammarians like this. For example, Nagavarma. For example, recently that Ferdinand Kittel, Mogling and others can be named. And these grammarians tried in their own way to understand and to form the structure of a language, to communicate it very effectively and properly. Most of them are succeeded in their efforts. Now we have the language in this way because of the efforts of those grammarians, efforts of those linguists. Nowadays, a separate department is established under the title linguistics to study the nature, scope and characteristics of a language. We have so many languages in this world, thousands of languages. Of course, every language has its own records. Every language has its own characteristics and natures and scope. But some of the languages are very old or very ancient. For example, Kannada, Tamil, Sanskrit, Akkadian languages, Latin and Greek languages, etc., etc. We can name some of them. But other languages are also ancient, but we don't have that much of record to establish the ancientness of those languages, the ancestry of those languages. It doesn't mean we deny the ancestry and ancientness of those languages, but the languages have their own communication system, and even today there are languages which some people speak. I have forgotten a name of a language which is spoken by only one man, and recently that man is also dead. And by the death of that man, the existence of that language is also disappeared. So, language is a collective and community work. At the same time, a man can continue that language in his or her or in its own way. That is why we can't deny the existence of language, we can't deny the use of the language. If you deny the use of a language to that extent, you are failed to understand human nature, you are failed to understand the phenomena. Of course, we talk of mother tongues, provincial languages, state language, etc., etc. These are some of the words we use in order to assess a language, in order to use a language very effectively, very properly. If a person is born and bred in a particular area, in a particular community, or in a particular region, the language of that particular community, the language of that region would become one's mother tongue. If I am born in Karnataka and bred in Karnataka, definitely Kannada becomes my mother tongue. If I am born in Tamil Nadu and bred in Karnataka, definitely my mother tongue may become Kannada. If I am born in Andhra but bred in USA and stays in USA, then one's mother tongue would become the language of that region in America. Like that, different definitions can be given regarding the mother tongue. But it is not in one's own hand. It depends upon the context, phenomena, reaction to that phenomena, and etc., etc. That is why language is very vast. For sake of our convenience, we talk of mother tongue, we talk of regional language, we talk of other things. Countries like India has so many mother tongues. Countries like India have so many official languages. Hindi is not an official language. Every language, that is according to emblem of the constitution, mentioned in that constitution, all those languages become national languages. Not Hindi. Hindi is one of the national languages. That is different. So, there are languages which are born and bred in Indian land, and there are languages which are born and bred in foreign land, in foreign culture, and come to India and becomes the part of India also. So like this, the language has its own effects on the lives of the people, on the culture of the people, on the social activity of the people. That is why whenever we try to understand the origin of a language, it should be seen with the background of these things, and then only one can come to a proper conclusion. I think you have caught my point. And the nature, scope and characteristics of a language can be said in the next episode. Subscribe it and share it. See you in the next episode. Thank you. Namaskar.